Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Good morning. Are you ready for the Word?
Yes, sir.
Turn to Genesis 3. We'll read verse 15. Yahweh speaking to the serpent said, I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. It shall bruise your head, you shall bruise his heel. Again, notice the phrase, your seed. The serpent had been an angel. Angels do not marry, nor are they given in marriage. We know that from our Messiah. There is no female counterpart to an angel. But yet Yahweh said here, I will put enmity between your seed and her seed. So how is the serpent going to produce seed? We find the answer to that in Genesis chapter 6. In Genesis 6 verse 1 we read, It came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. So the sons of God are angels who have followed the serpent in his rebellion. They're called fallen angels. The serpent has set out now upon an experiment. He's going to experiment with these angels, some of these angels who have followed him. He's going to run an experiment with these fallen angels and the daughters of men and see if they can produce seed. We find out that they could as we read on. And Yahweh said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. Verse 4 is letting us know that what takes place in the earth is a direct result of these fallen ones, these angels, these sons of God, marrying the daughters of men. Notice there it says that the daughters of men, they bear children to them. Children is in italics. What does that mean? Wasn't there in the original. It was added for clarity. I find it interesting that when it was written, when it was spoken to Moses and he wrote it down, that these offspring that came forth wasn't even called children. These women bear to these angels, but it's not normal. Let me leave it at that right now. It's not normal. The offspring is not even classified as what you and I would know as children. Became is in italics. The same were mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. So in verse 2, we saw that the serpent was experimenting, seeking to produce a seed. Verse 4 tells us the experiments were successful. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. We have known that, right?
Right.
We have known there were giants in the earth. We at least knew about Goliath.
Right.
Yeah.
We were taught about Goliath.
Right.
And if we paid attention, we were told Goliath had 4 brothers. Right? So we knew there were at least 5 of them. Right. Am I correct? But I'm not sure that most of us thought about giants being in the earth beyond that level of consciousness. Right. Other than Goliath and his brothers. We thought Goliath and his brothers were just big old freaks in nature. We did not think, we did not consider, we were not taught that they were actually the offspring of an unnatural union between the sons of God and the daughters of men. Were you taught that? No. I was not. We read or we were taught about Goliath, but nobody dared to tell us how this man and his brothers became so large. We were just told he was big and that David whipped him.
Yep.
David killed him. David cut his head off. That's all we were told. But we weren't told how he got so big or why he was big, where he came from. No one dared to mention to us that this man was a result of the serpent seeking to produce seed in the earth. At least in my experience. No one wanted to mention that Goliath was a result of Genesis 6:4, of a result of Genesis 3:15, that the serpent and the fallen ones were seeking to produce a seed in the earth, and the result was people like Goliath. That kind of information would cause too much of a stir in a Sunday school class. So we've been trained to hear that Goliath was a giant, but trained to never question, why is he a giant? How did he become a giant? Where did he come from? Let's go read the description of Goliath one more time. 1 Samuel 17. And what I want us to do, and it's a challenge, but we can do it. What I want us to do is read it as if we've never read it before. Don't go to it with preconceived ideas. But let the Bible say what it says. 1 Samuel 17 verse 4. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. How long is a cubit?
18.
Elbow, tip of your finger. So now you can understand that measurement varied. Sometimes it was as little as 18 inches. There are times that a cubit was considered to be what we would think around 22 inches. How long is a span? Yahweh stretched out the heavens with a span. How long is a span? From here to here. It's really about half a cubit. Yeah. So, he's 6 cubits tall and a span. So, at the minimum, he's 9 feet tall, considering cubits. 6 cubits would be 9 feet. At the high end, 6 cubits would be 10.5 feet. You add a span to that, which I measured this morning before I left between my thumb and my finger, and I got small hands. My thumb and my finger's 9 inches. So, again, at a minimum, he's 9 feet 9 inches tall, or possibly as tall as 11 feet 4 inches. Now, he's not just tall, he's massive and powerful. Let's read on. He had on a helmet of brass upon his head. He was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. He put it on and wore it like you would wear your winter coat. Yeah. That's strong. Yeah. This man's massive and powerful beyond our imagination. Verse 6. He had greaves of brass upon his legs and a target of brass between his shoulders. That is, he had armor on his shins, and he was carrying or had strapped to him a shield. He's got a lot of weight he's moving around there. Sir. So you understand this is more than a guy that's just a little bit taller than David.
Right. Oh, yeah.
This guy's massive and he's powerful. The staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam. And his spearhead weighed 600 shekels of iron. And one bearing a shield went before him. 600 shekels would be somewhere between 14 and 22.5 pounds, according to which measurement you use. A large sledgehammer head weighs 10 pounds. A very large sledgehammer weighs 20 pounds. The head of a sledgehammer. 20-pound sledgehammer, you better eat your Cheerios if you're going to swing one of those. They're hard to swing and even harder to use with precision. You certainly don't take a 20-pound sledgehammer head, grind it off to a point, stick a stick in it, and use it to throw at things. His spear had a head on it that weighed 18, 20, 22 pounds. That's powerful.
Yes, sir.
So here we have a man that's 11 feet tall, carrying a brass or bronze shield, got another shield in front of him, holding a spear whose head weighed 20 pounds. This isn't just some tall guy that played basketball. This is a man whose size you and I have never seen, and because of that, we have a hard time grasping what our Bible's trying to tell us about him. If you put me next to Shaquille O'Neal, I would look small. I'm not small, but I would look small next to Shaquille O'Neal. How tall is Shaquille? 7'1". I knew y'all would know. 7'1". Do you know how much he weighs?
About 350.
Close to it. What I looked up, probably in his playing day, he probably does weigh over 350 now, Will. Thank you. His playing days, 324 pounds. 7'1", 324. Next to Shaquille O'Neal, I would look small. Goliath stood 3 to 4 feet taller than Shaquille O'Neal. Shaquille O'Neal would hit him about right here.
Wow.
You understand?
Yeah.
This guy's massive. I try to find calculators to estimate the weight of Goliath. And at his weight, the calculator that I found suggested that Goliath had to weigh at least 762 pounds. He probably weighed more than that, but at a minimum, 762 pounds. Now, I'm not trying to sensationalize or exaggerate the size of Goliath, but I am trying to destroy our Sunday school version of the man. This man was not just a big human. This man was a result of a Genesis 6 experiment run by Satan himself. His genetics have been altered. He is not a big human. He is a big seed of the serpent. And he had 4 brothers. And it's true that in David's day, there weren't as many of them as there had been in the earth. But that's only because Joshua and Caleb killed them off.
Amen.
The spies said that they were everywhere in Canaan. And we're told that Joshua exterminated them everywhere except for 3 places. Let's go look at the 3 places again that he said he exterminated them. Except for these 3. Joshua 11. Joshua 11 verse 21. And at that time came Joshua and cut off the Anakims from the mountains, from Hebron, from Debir, and from Anab, and from all the mountains of Judah, from all the mountains of Israel. Joshua destroyed them utterly with their cities. Anakims is a reference to giants. We'll talk more about that later. There was none of the Anakims left in the land of the children of Israel, only in Gaza, Gath, Ashdod, there remained. Let's define these words and places. Anakim. Anakim are descendants of Anak. Why would he mention them? Of all the places he cleared out in Canaan, why does it mention the Anakim and say that they were exterminated, eliminated everywhere except for these 3 places? Well, because it matters who Anak is and who his descendants are. Turn to Deuteronomy 2. Keep your place there in Joshua. Don't lose that place, but let's go to Deuteronomy 2 for just a moment. Let the Bible explain the Bible. Deuteronomy 2 verse 10. The Emims dwelt there in times past, a people great and many and tall as the Anakim, which also were accounted giants as the Anakims. But the Moabite called them Emims. So there was a species of being that was big, great, tall. You would compare them to the Anakims, but they were called Emims in that land. Verse 19. When you come now over against the children of Ammon, distress them not, nor meddle with them. For I will not give you of the land of the children of Ammon any possession, because I've given it unto the children of Lot for possession. That also was accounted a land of giants. Giants dwelt therein in old time, and the Ammonites called them Zamzummims. So you got the Emims that are likened unto Anakim, and then you got the Zamzummims that are likened to the Anakims. The Ammonites had giants dwelling in their land, and they had their own name for them. Verse 21, a people great and many and tall as the Anakims, but Yahweh destroyed them before them, and they succeeded them and dwelt in their stead. That is, the descendants of Lot did this. So when you see the word Anakim, know that that word is used as a reference point to talk about a species of giants. Okay? How big were the Anakims? Well, listen to what the spies said about them. Let me refresh your memory. Here's what the spies said when they saw the Anakims. And there we saw the giants, the son of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in theirs. The children of Israel described the sons of Anak and said they were so big we looked like grasshoppers in their sight. That's in Numbers 13:33. He said this in verse 22. There was none of the Anakims left in the land of the children of Israel, only in Gaza, in Gath, and Ashdod there remain. So the Anakims are these entities that defy logic. They are products of the Genesis 6 experiment that the serpent conducted to produce seed in the earth. These beings are massive, they're fierce, they're not just large humans, they're genetically modified creatures who are only part human. They are not the seed of the woman, they're not the seed of Adam, they're a different seed. So Joshua exterminates them out of the land of Canaan when they had infested the land of Canaan. And why did they, we talked about this last week, before we move on, let's go over that. Why did they infest the land of Canaan?
That's when they knew the children of Israel were going to be.
They knew that Yahweh had promised that land to the seed of Abraham. And if they're going to destroy that righteous seed, they set up an ambush for them in Canaan while they're 400 years in Egypt. They've infested that place to keep them from possessing it and to utterly destroy the seed of Abraham. All right? Let's read on. But Joshua goes in and he begins to exterminate them. He almost accomplishes that. He gets them all except for those who had created a stronghold in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod. All three of these places are homes of the Philistines. Where was Goliath from? Gath. So what is that telling you? He's part of that Anakim family. He's part of that seed. Gaza is where Samson met his death among the Philistines. In Gath, in Gaza, in Ashdod, there remain beings that are half human and half angel. Part human, part angel. Beings that were huge and fierce. Beings who hated Yahweh and who hated the seed of the woman. And it is not a coincidence that even today, those three areas are still the hotbed of the hatred for Yahweh and the hatred for the seed of Abraham. You want to read an interesting passage? Go to Jeremiah 25. I just assumed you did and told you where it was. Jeremiah 25. Jeremiah 25 verse 15. For thus saith Yahweh Elohim of Israel unto me, take the wine cup of this fury at my hand, and cause all the nations to whom I send you to drink it. And they shall drink and be moved and be mad because of the sword that I will send among them. And then I took the cup at Yahweh's hand and made all the nations to drink unto whom Yahweh had sent me, to wit, Jerusalem and the cities of Judah and the kings thereof and the princes thereof, to make them a desolation, an astonishment, a hissing, and a curse, as it is this day. Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and his servants, and his princes, and all his people, and all the mingled people. All the kings of the land of Uz, and all the kings of the land of the Philistines, and Ashkelon, and Azza, and Ekron, and the remnant of Ashdod. When he talks about the people in Uz and the land of the Philistine, he refers to them as mingled. It is juvenile for us to believe that this reference of mingled people simply refers to those who are byproducts of interracial marriages. He is referring to the Genesis 6 experiment and the seed of the serpent that is in the earth. The word mingled was used as a weaving term. On a weaver's beam there was vertical, stationary threads, and then horizontal threads. These didn't move. Horizontal threads were weaved between them. There's something woven into the seed of the woman in Genesis 6 that causes them to be referred to as mingled. Goliath is just one proof of that. Goliath is one of the mingled people. He had four brothers who are mingled people. They came from a land that was inhabited by mingled people. The seed of the woman mingled with the seed of the fallen ones. Here's the point I'm desperately seeking to make. When we read about Goliath, it is about more than a boy with a slingshot and faith. We should stop when we read this story and ask ourselves, who is this guy? Where did he come from? And how did he get so big? And if we'll ask ourselves that question, we'll find out that the answer is listed in Genesis 6. He wasn't just some freak of nature that when his mother and dad had him, they said, wow, that boy must have eaten a lot of steak. He's getting big. No. He got that massive and beyond description size because his genetics have been modified. Yeah. Now listen carefully to me here. If it was bad in David's day of having to deal with these mingled ones, it was worse in Joshua and Caleb's day of having to deal with these mingled ones. And if it was bad in Joshua's day of having to deal with these mingled ones, it was worse in Noah's day. It was far, far worse before the flood. So let's talk about how bad it was in Noah's day. Go to Genesis 6 again. Genesis 6 verse 1. Let's let the Bible say what it says. Came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. Why have they taken wives? They're going to experiment with the seed. Yahweh said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare to them the same mighty men, which of old men of renown. I read that without the italicized words. This verse is letting us know that a being is now in the earth that's not of the seed of Adam. It's not the seed of a woman, it's the seed of the serpent. Listen carefully to how this seed is referred to. It was mighty men. Gibor means powerful, tyrannical warrior. Men of renown. Moses is saying to us, you know who these beings were. You know who they are. They're well known. Their names and their existence is well documented. It's been hidden from you and I. But when Moses said men of renown, the ones he was speaking to knew exactly what he was talking about. This was a specific species of being that they were well aware of. Verse 5. And Yahweh saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, that every imagination of the thought of his heart was only evil continually. The issue is not only with what the serpent did, the issue is that mankind began to cooperate with him. The promise of producing a supernatural offspring appealed to man. The imagination of what man could become if only he could alter his genetics began to consume his mind and heart, and he became a willing participant in this experiment. It's the same lie being told to them then that was told to them in the beginning in the garden. Yahweh's holding you back. He's keeping things from you. Let me teach you knowledge that you don't yet have. Let me give you things you don't yet have. You can become as He is. And men began to participate with these fallen ones to become something greater, they thought, than they already were. To break free, to have freedom from Yahweh, and to become gods unto themselves. Verse 6. It repented Yahweh that He had made man on the earth, and it grieved Him at His heart. That is, Yahweh is grieved in His heart because of how deceived man has become and what He's now going to have to do. Verse 7. Yahweh said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast and creeping thing and the fowls of the air, for it repents me that I have made them. Let me ask you this question. If man needed to be destroyed from the face of the earth, and he did, was there not some way to destroy him without having to destroy the beast and the fowl and the creeping things? Sure there was. But the problem was those things had become corrupted too. The Genesis 6 experiment included animals and plants. There's more going on. Imagine that, genetically modifying plants. Could that be possible? Genetically modifying animals. Verse 8, Noah found grace in the eyes of Yahweh. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man. Just means that speaks of how he lived. And perfect in his generations. And Noah walked with Yahweh. Noah was perfect in his generation speaks of more than just how he lived. Doesn't say he was perfect. It says he was perfect where? In his generations. How have we missed that?
How we missed it.
This says Noah was perfect in his generations. It says it that way for a reason. His generations had not been corrupted by the sons of God with the daughters of men. His lineage from him back to Adam was a pure lineage. None of the daughters of men in his generation had been involved in this wicked endeavor that was taking place in the earth. The generations of Noah were the sons of man, not the seed of the serpent. This is a message for another time. We got a lot of ground to cover. But when I read these things and I consider these things and I think about what was taking place on the earth before and after the flood and what the serpent began to do in Genesis 3:15, is it any wonder that our Messiah identified himself over and over and over again in one particular way? Do you remember what way that was? What was it? The Son of Man has come. The Son of Man has come. He identified himself as the son of Adam. His lineage was not contaminated. No wonder that Matthew and Luke take the time to trace their lineage from the beginning up until the time of the Messiah. It is to prove that the Messiah is the son of Adam, the son of man, not the seed of the serpent. Whew. Generations of Noah were not contaminated. His bloodline was uncontaminated. The word perfect means without spot. It means undefiled. Verse 10, Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth also was corrupt before Elohim, and the earth was filled with violence. Notice that. The earth was corrupt. Not just man, the earth. There was genetic modifications taking place in the earth as well as in mankind. When you go to genetically modifying things in the earth, you're destroying it.
Right.
And it was filled with violence. The root word here means falseness. Falsehood is being perpetrated. Truth is being turned into lies violently. Lies are being turned into truth violently. Falsehood refers to a violence that's taking place. Verse 12. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. The wording there in verse 12 is very significant. There is a difference between saying that men were sinning greatly and saying the earth was corrupt and that all flesh had corrupted his way. If it was just about sin, it would have said, and men were sinning greatly. Yeah. But that's not what it said. It said that Yahweh looked upon the earth, and behold, the earth was corrupt. And all flesh had corrupted his way. The word corrupt means to mar, to destroy, or to ruin. So the earth was ruined before Yahweh destroyed it. Let that sink in. The earth was ruined before Yahweh destroyed it. It had reached a point that it could not be salvaged. It could not be restored. And man had ruined his way, corrupted his way. Once you go down the road of genetic modification, it cannot be undone. Right. Cannot be reversed. So man ruined himself before Yahweh destroyed the earth with a flood. But Noah was perfect in his generation. His generation had not been corrupted. His generation had not been tampered with. Verse 13, and Yahweh said unto Noah, notice again the wording, the end of all flesh is come before me. For the earth is filled with violence. Again, that word means falseness, or the root of that word is falseness. It's filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. The end of all flesh. Again, interesting words. Let's let it say what it says. The end of all flesh is come before Yahweh. The end of all flesh he had created. The end of species that he had put upon the earth. In Genesis 2, we read of how Yahweh took a rib out of the side of Adam and closed up the flesh thereof. He made a woman, presented her to Adam, and Adam looked at it and said, behold, bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh. It's interesting that Yahweh uses the word flesh when he says the end of all flesh has come before me. The end of the species that I put here has come. This perfect, genetic, untampered with, uncontaminated form of flesh that Yahweh had created had come before Yahweh and had come to an end except through one, the generations of Noah. And that caused the earth to be filled with violence. What existed was false, what existed was violent. Notice Yahweh said, I will destroy them with the earth. Who is them? The them whose generations were corrupted and ruined and beyond repair. Now drop down to verse 17. And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life from under the heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. This is a thorough cleansing of a corruption that has permeated all of creation. Most of us have never truly considered why the flood came. We thought it was just about sin, but it wasn't. It's about far more than sin. It's about a serpent-led rebellion seeking to annihilate and eliminate the seed of woman from the earth. It was about beings who were now roaming the earth who were only part human. Their generations had become corrupted. It was about more than sin. It had to be about more than sin. Think about that. Look around you today.
Right.
Men are trying to become women. Women are trying to become men. The United Methodist Church had to have a vote last week on whether to ordain homosexuals or not. Had to have a vote. Well, why would you even have to have a vote? The vote to not ordain them carried, but by a slim margin.
Wow.
So what that means is almost half of those voting said, I see nothing wrong with it. A few weeks ago, New York's law that allows babies to be killed in the womb up to the time of delivery was applauded. 2 weeks ago, a law was voted down in Congress that would protect babies that survived abortion from being killed outside the womb. That law failed. Or that proposal failed. Several weeks ago, pastors and preachers were going about praying blessings over abortion clinics. A few weeks ago, a doctor, an abortionist named Willie Parker, who says that he's a Christian, stated that abortion procedures kill human beings. When he was asked how many human beings he had killed, his answer was, I don't know. When asked if he had lost count, he responded, if it's 1 million, what does it matter? He went on to say that he believes he's doing the Lord's work when he kills unborn babies in the womb. Are we really so naive as to believe that sin is what caused the flood in the day and age in which we live? There was something far more sinister than just sin going on. And if we let the Bible say what it says, we can clearly see what that something else was. And it may make us uncomfortable to talk about it. And it may be hard for us to accept it as it is written. But there is one reason. There is one very compelling reason that we'd better look into it and understand what caused the flood. And that reason is found in Matthew 24. You want to read it with me?
Yes, sir.
It may make us uncomfortable to talk about what really happened in Genesis 6. It may make us uncomfortable to try to comprehend exactly what Nephilim are, and what Raphaim are, and what Anakim are, and what Zamzummins are. It may be difficult for us to wrap our minds around the fact that Goliath was not human. But we have one compelling reason to do so. Matthew 24, verse 36. But of the day and hour knows no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, knew not that the flood came and took them all away, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Yes, his coming shall catch many by surprise, and that's part of the message there, but that's not the whole point. As the days of Noah, look back and find out what was going on in the days of Noah, and you'll get an idea of what's going to be going on in the days of the coming of the Son of Man.
That's right.
Whatever it looks like in those days, it shall be again. Does that mean that there will be a massive corruption that comes upon the earth that includes the genetic modification of plants, animals, and humans? I think we have to consider it, and we have to be prepared to do three things. We have to be prepared to protect ourselves. We have to be prepared to protect our generations. And we have to be prepared to protect our hearts. Because if you look in Matthew 24, here's what Messiah also said. In verse 21, he said, For there shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Do you understand that in the days of Noah, had those days not been cut short, no flesh would have been saved? The flesh that Yahweh created in Adam would have been destroyed through genetic modification had those days not been shortened. And here the Messiah is telling us in Matthew 24 that except those days be shortened again, no flesh shall be saved. But for the elect's sake, for those like unto Noah who are perfect in their generation, for those who hold true, for their sake it's going to be shortened. No flesh. Why didn't he say no man? Why didn't he say no woman? Why didn't he say no person? Why didn't he say except those days be shortened, there should no soul be saved? Because the point is our genetic makeup in our flesh. That's the point. He said flesh. Is that word choice not significant? I think it is. So, let me close by saying this to you. I have no desire to talk about giants. I have no desire to talk about Nephilim or Raphaim. In my flesh, I do not have those desires. However, in my spirit, I feel drawn and compelled to arm myself and you with this knowledge.
Amen.
The information in Genesis 3 and in Genesis 6 are there to prepare us for the days that are coming upon us. May we have eyes to see. May we have ears to hear. May we have hearts that are open and capable of understanding what Genesis 6 is trying to warn us about and what Messiah tried to warn us about in Matthew 24. Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. As His name is put upon you, so shall He bless you.